Eric, can I get a confirmation you can hear me? Eric, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Perfect. All right. Welcome, everybody. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Cameron Stuffelneam. I'm with Polk County Emergency Management, and welcome to our Lunch and Learn on public-private partnerships. If for some reason you have a lunch, enjoy. If you need a beverage, we don't have any coffee out right now, but that's okay. If you need a soda or anything, right back behind me is a break room. If you need a restroom, go out the doors you came in, hang a left, they're right around the corner. We'll probably have some coffee here in a little bit if you need coffee. If for some reason it's not anticipated, but we have severe weather, follow me. I'll lead y'all to a safe spot. If we have a fire, we're gonna go out the doors we came in and we'll huddle up in the parking lot, do a quick accountability and see where we go from there. With that, I'm gonna do a little bit of introductions, but I'm gonna let these guys introduce themselves a little bit as well. But to keep time short, I'm gonna do a quick round. Jay Knox here in front of me with Safeguard Iowa Partnership.
Good job.
Thanks.
Cam's using all his words today.
Yeah, you're making me use them all.
Don't make him write them down.
We have Cole Bisgard with Hy-Vee, and then online, and you can see his presentation, is Eric Tigas with Clay County Emergency Management. With that, Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you get going.
All right. Thanks, Cameron. Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Tigas. I've been with Clay County Emergency Management since 2008, so I've done this for a little while now. I'm going to talk a little bit about the flood that we experienced in Clay County, but in particular in Spencer, Iowa on June 22nd. And so we'll just kind of jump right into it here. So this is just a high-level overview. So you can see the community of Spencer is there in the middle. If you look to the north, the river that is coming from which is up, obviously, the Little Sioux River is coming from the north. And then if you look to the left side of your screen to the west, that is the Ocheyedan River. The Ocheyedan River is on a daily basis the much smaller river. And then if you look coming from the north and entering the Ocheyedan River, or the Ocheyedan way to the west of Spencer, that's Muddy Creek. Muddy Creek on a daily basis you could probably jump across. But during this storm, Muddy knocked a bridge out on Highway 18 and knocked out a railroad bridge as well. And so there was a significant amount of rain, 19 inches of rain fell in about the 2 to 2.5 days before this flood. And so it was kind of on top of us and just north of us. And so you can see that the Ocheyedan River and the Little Sioux River, the confluence of those two rivers happens within the corporate city limits of the community of Spencer. And so we have a lot of water coming into the community. If I zoom in a little bit on Spencer, you can see that the Ocheyedan River decided to take a bit of a shortcut across the south side of Spencer. And so that was a huge issue for us. All of our bridges, all of our roadways to get from the north side of town to the south side of town were impassable. We were unable to get any type of resources by vehicle across the river. We were able to use boats, but the current, even in the side streets, even far away from the main channel of the river, was very swift. And I'll talk a little bit about boats here in a little bit, but this was a huge issue for us logistically. We had we made a few pretty good decisions, and one of the better ones that we made was that we sent resources south while we still could, and so we were able to have ambulances and a fire truck and law enforcement on the south side staged in the Walmart parking lot. As well as the north side, because after the river had crested, again, we were completely unable to get from the north to the south. Later that night in a shelter, we had an individual who needed a oxygen machine and some insulin, and we had to figure out a way to get that there, and a state trooper kindly volunteered to find a way, and that was a 90-minute round trip from the Spencer Hospital, which obviously is probably in the middle of the north side of town, to a shelter on the south time. That was a 90-minute drive for him to find a way to get around to the south side. So the population of Spencer is 11,413 people. There's approximately 5,100 structures. That's homes, businesses, garages, whatever. About 5,100 structures in Spencer. Of that 5,100, 3,825 or 75% were impacted by either top water or sewer. We had and I'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to back up here just one slide. If you look at the middle right of your screen, there's a number 17. But if you look directly below that, there's a square. That square is the lagoon for the city of Spencer. So the lagoon has a berm around it, and the water never got over the berm of the lagoon. But just directly to the west of that is the sewer treatment plant, and the sewer treatment plant was completely flooded and inundated by water. And so we didn't have sewer in the community of Spencer for almost a week. When the sewer treatment plant went down, then sewer backed up through all of our lines, and again impacted sewer back up to 3,825 separate residences. Just over 2,000 residences, or about 40%, were impacted by top water. That was, some obviously more than others. Some were just water that got into basements and never got to the main floor. Some that were completely inundated and 10 feet of water through the main level of their house. We had 102 separate residences that had collapsed foundations, and 200 businesses were impacted. 50 of those businesses were impacted catastrophically. Some of those businesses will never return. We immediately lost 60% of our hotel occupancy. We had multiple hotels that were flooded and were inundated by water. And so 60% of our hotels were gone that morning. Some of the hotels, again, will never return. But we had a lot of issues with housing, and continue to have issues with housing. An estimated 700 to 800 people, mostly on the south side of town. Mostly on the south side of town, were rescued by boat. The police department, the fire department, the 911 dispatch center, City Hall, the Clay County Courthouse, the Clay County Administration Building, Clay County Attorney's Office were all flooded. And so we lost all of our ready infrastructures in the community in the first few hours of this flood. We started out setting up an EOC at City Hall. That was our plan. We'd had in the city of Spencer, as we do lots of tabletop exercises with the city of Spencer. I write a tabletop for them at least a couple of times a year. And so we went right into kind of EOC mode, and we went into the room that we always do that in. And then the building flooded. And so we had to evacuate. And so in the middle of our response, we had to evacuate and relocate the EOC further north to Iowa Lakes Community College. Iowa Lakes was incredibly generous to us because we moved in with 5 minutes notice, and we were there for 2 weeks. Fortunately, it was in the summertime, and so classes weren't being held. The main level of City Hall actually never got water in it. It was just the basement that flooded. But when the basement flooded, we lost internet, telephones, electricity, all of that stuff. A huge issue that we had and continue to have is that 65% of our rental property was impacted during the flood. And so finding, whole apartment buildings that will never be reopened. And so the rental market in Spencer was catastrophically impacted, and that's something that we're not going to fix overnight. But 420 separate properties representing about 840 rental units were all taken offline that day. So the emergency plan was activated city and county leadership, we met at City Hall, established the EOC. And again, the internet went down, the telephones went down. And so then the Public Works said, we're evacuating this building. The police chief, Chief Warburton, who I've known for 30 years, we went to the police academy together way back in the day. Chief Warburton was in Florida vacationing with his family. The city manager was out of town vacationing with his family. We had no deputy city administrator. The fire chief, Chief Colson, who did an incredible job, had been there less than a year. And so we had a definite issue with a lack of city leadership all at the same time, so Mayor Baumgars stepped up to the plate, did an amazing job. Myself and Jessica Wright, who is the HR director, and Jessica has a history in kind of disaster management, and so she was instrumental, and just a lot of people that really stepped up. But again, we lost all of our communications, all of our radio communications from the dispatch center was gone in the first couple hours. Our backup communications center, which we're smart and we plan, and so our backup comm center was at Spencer Fire. So if we ever had to evacuate the communication center for whatever reason, we had a backup. The reality was with this flood, we lost the backup comm center before we lost the comm center. And so state DPS, we worked with state DPS. They brought in a truck. That we could dispatch out of, and we were able over the next couple of days to establish phone lines and even 911 back into there again. The problem was that the DPS truck is a 700 megahertz unit, and we don't run on a 700 megahertz radio frequency, and so we never had the ability for several days, for over a week, to page any of our rural fire departments, any of our rural ambulance teams, and that created a lot of logistical challenges for us. So every blue dot represents a structure within the corporate city limits of Spencer. Every light blue dot represents a residence that was impacted by the flood. The gray there, and why it's gray, I'm not sure, but that's the river. And as you can see, that even at the widest, there were lots of structures that were impacted by the sewer issues as opposed to top flood water. And so it was a lot for sure. Again, we lost city sewer. We had to shut down the city sewer. We didn't have city sewer for several days. We were fortunate in that there's several vendors in Clay County that have porta pots, and they were super cooperative and amazing for us. And so we dropped porta pots as the river receded. We dropped porta pots in lots of neighborhoods and things like that to kind of alleviate as much. Obviously, the people were still using their toilets in some parts of town. Others, it was completely not possible. But that was a big issue for us the first few days. Was just no sewer whatsoever. I'm an incident command nerd at the end of the day. We established incident command and had a structure, and we've tabletopped a fair amount of times, and we've talked about incident command a bunch of times. And so we established what's called unified command, which is where the police chief, the fire chief, the city manager, and the public works director all kind of assume a leadership group and make decisions on behalf of the city in a unified manner. And then everything kind of breaks down after that. Public information officer, and I'll talk a little bit more about public information in a minute, but establishing a PIO, a public information officer, and then vetting all of the information through the EOC to make sure that everybody was giving as good of an accurate as information as we possibly could, was something I pushed pretty hard for early on, and something we did, I think pretty well. Obviously, there's always going to be not misinformation, but information that could have been more clearly stated. But I think that we were pretty good at getting as much information out as we could. So lessons learned. When you establish the EOC, And again, we always did the EOC in the little room at City Hall, but what's the backup? What's the backup plan? And not only that, but who are, well, hey, the police chief's going to be the incident commander, the fire chief's going to be the incident manager, the city manager is going to be the incident commander. But what happens when those people aren't there? What happens when they can't be there? Again, not only was this a 1 in a million storm, but it was a 1 in a million time in that we were missing some key people. And so how do you make adjustments for that? How do you make sure that your EOC is going to operate when some of your key players aren't there? And then include community housing and mental health stuff. Community housing in the aftermath and the recovery of this has been an amazing component for us. And again, we lost a lot of rental property, but we lost a lot of homeowners' properties as well. And so logistically finding and being able to assist and leverage our community housing partners to do some really amazing work. And they were instrumental in our EOC in the days after this flood. And probably not somebody you would be the first person that you would think would be somebody that would be in your EOC. This is downtown Spencer. If you've ever driven through Spencer on your way to the Iowa Great Lakes or anything, this is Grand Avenue, Highway 71, right through town looking. So you're standing on Grand Avenue looking west. And so the Red Cross had a storage center and had some logistical equipment there for us to use, but it was in the building on the right and was completely flooded, and all of that stuff was destroyed. And so in my emergency management plans, I of course had, well, hey, I know that there's 100 cots and some blankets and some pillows and things like that at the Red Cross shelter that I would be able to go and grab and utilize should I ever have the need. And that was all gone. Boats. So we had, and again, we rescued between 700 and 800 people from the waters. But as you talk about that stuff, a boat is not a boat. And so some of the water was 10 feet deep. Some of the water was, as you can see in this picture, thigh deep. Well, some boats are going to run their props onto the ground. Some boats are not designed to drive in that kind of water. And other boats, frankly, were too small and the current got away from them, which created a significant risk to public safety. We had a lot of spontaneous volunteers. We had a lot of people that wanted to come and help, a lot of people that did really, really good things that we are incredibly grateful for, but we needed to, kind of measure up a little bit how those boats were going to be impacted by the very swift current in the water and make sure that we could keep everybody as safe as we possibly could. Keeping track of our city vehicles, which obviously we had city vehicles and county vehicles that were flooded. The Clay County Secondary Roads shop is right next to the river, and so we took a pretty significant hit to secondary roads and the shop. But just making sure that all of our city vehicles were accounted for and were being utilized as best they could was an issue for us. And then just staff communication, being able to communicate with everybody, group texts or whatever that needed to be. At Clay County, we developed kind of a group text in the aftermath, and we all agreed that was probably something we probably should have done in front of. So again, as I stated earlier, we made a couple really good decisions early on. One of them was to split and send firemen and first responders, law enforcement, EMS south, because it was completely unable to be crossed. And so we had resources there. Our neighbors in Buena Vista County, our neighbors in Sac County sent up ambulances to assist. And so we were never not without an ambulance and the ability to respond to a medical emergency if we ever had the need to do that on either side of the river. EOC personnel. Do you have a plan for how this works over the first 72 hours. So I got up Friday morning and went to work like I normally would. The storm came in Friday about 10 o'clock and stayed until say 12:30 or 1 o'clock. There was actually, there was some wind, but it wasn't a severe storm, quote unquote. It just dropped lots and lots of rain. So I crawled into bed briefly, but never actually slept about 12:30 or 1 o'clock. And about 3:30, 4 o'clock, something like that, I got a phone call from the city that the water was going to go over the berm. And then I didn't go home again until sometime on Sunday. So obviously that's not ideal. So, what is the plan for getting people to rest? And when I did go home on Sunday, I slept for about 2 hours and then away I went again. Um, Having key people, having, order of transition, how are you going to get people in and out of the EOC? How are you going to give your people some rest? Because this is going to be a long duration event. Um, Communications flow. We've worked with Spencer Hospital many times, and we've done call center exercises. So, as the part of the Clay County Healthcare Coalition, we had purchased some call center equipment, and we had exercised that literally 3 weeks before this. And so we stood up that call center at the hospital. The hospital set up that equipment, and so we were able to put out a phone number and for people who could send out and get information. The issue with that is getting the call center the information that when they ask questions, where that goes. And so you can't just turn those people loose with no information. You have to give them kind of those key documents, a spreadsheet, if you will, of the kind of the FAQ of the most commonly asked questions, and get that information to them. Documents, lots and lots of documents were created, obviously. Sheltering. So and I'll talk about the Red Cross in a minute. The Red Cross was amazing for us. But something you need to understand is that the Red Cross is not going to run your shelter the first day, and they're not going to run your shelter the second day. And for us, they didn't run the shelter the third day. You're going to have to run your own shelters in the immediate aftermath of that. And so, what's your plan for that? How do you run that shelter with locals? And so we'd had those discussions, and I had some people pre-appointed, completely overwhelmed, and were amazing and rock stars that I get teary-eyed speaking with to this day because of the job they did. But I didn't put them in a very good position, and it was only them being amazing were they able to reach that. The corn nuts and coffee is always kind of a running joke here. We had one of our volunteers who went to Menards. Menards didn't flood, and so went to Menards and bought an extraordinary amount of corn nuts to bring to one of our shelters because he thought that the people being evacuated needed snacks. And then priority one, keep if your team isn't healthy, if your team isn't good to go, then they're not going to be very able to be functional. We had lots of first responders, lots of cops, lots of firemen whose houses were impacted, who had to be allowed to take some time and go home and assess and maybe assist their wives or their families or whatever. We had to be able to take care of some people. Shelters. So again, I had shelter plans in place. We were going to take everybody to the Spencer YMCA. I have good friends with the Spencer YMCA. They've taken shelter training. They've done everything. People on the south side were unable to get to the Spencer YMCA. People on the north side were directed to the YMCA until the YMCA flooded. And when the YMCA flooded, then all bets were off. And now we're just scampering to try and figure out where we're going to put everybody. And so the people on the south side ended up at Faith Pentecostal Church. People on the north side ended up at Crosswinds Church, and then there are a couple of other spontaneous shelters that were opened up in that very early aftermath of the flood. There's a lesson learned here. As we cleared houses in the flood zone, we spray painted with a red X. We didn't use removable paint, and so there were people, justifiably so, who were upset that we had vandalized their property. We've kind of addressed this. Again, it was one of those things where it just kind of in the immediacy of it, that's what we did. to give ourselves notice that this house had been cleared. But obviously people are going to want to go home and they're going to want to fix it up, and having a big red X on their front door uh, was not very reassuring to them. Debris, and I can talk about debris for a long, long time. When you look at that picture, you say, "Boy, that's a lot of garbage on the curb out there." And I pushed really hard for two things during this flood. And the one thing that I pushed very hard on was debris removal, and to get the debris removed as quickly as we possibly could. Because when we look at that, we see that's a pile of wet garbage out there. But to the person that lives there, their wife's wedding dress is in there, and grandma's antique hutch is in there, and their kids' baby clothes and baptismal gown, and all of that stuff is laying in that pile. And I was a big proponent for the mental health of our community, and for the sake of us getting done, we needed to be respectful and get that stuff out of there as quick as we could. There was the thought that, well, hey, the debris on the curb is not an emergency, and I agree with that, but it's something we needed to go. And so I had made requests to the state. The state was an amazing partner in all this. We had the DOT come in, the National Guard came in, the Air Guard came in, and helped us to remove debris as quickly as we possibly could. Just a little lesson learned there as well. And don't end up that pickup early. It's going to take people a while. It's going to take people a long time to get that stuff out of there. They're not going to do it all at once in a nice, clean, and orderly fashion. It's going to take weeks and even months to get that debris out of there. And so have a plan. And we altered our plan multiple times. But at the end of the day, we had 1,300 side dump trucks of ground debris that was taken to the landfill. So it was a lot. How am I doing, Cameron?
Doing just fine. Keep going.
Okay. Public information. We decided that there was as much information as we could put out on social media and emails and all that kind of stuff. And again, all of that stuff coordinated through the EOC, through our public information officer. But we decided that we were going to have a couple of forums, and we had a couple forums, two actually, where people could come and they could sit down in front of city officials and county officials and FEMA and all kinds of people that could answer questions that they had, because there were lots of questions. And the reality is that a Facebook post is not going to get everything. And so those forums were well received. The questions were vetted. We didn't allow anybody to just kind of stand up and hand them a microphone. They had to submit their questions. And then after the thing, we had tables where people could go and could ask questions directly. But it worked really, really well for us, and it was just an opportunity to say, hey, we're all on the same team, we're all working together, we're all doing what we can here. And so I would encourage you to, if you ever are in a situation like that, we want to be open, we want to be transparent, we want to be honest every single time, and we want to provide them with opportunities to communicate with us. NGOs. So during the hard days, remember you're surrounded by really good people, and that was so true with us. In the upper right-hand picture, I talked a little bit earlier about our community housing team. That's them. Angels on earth. They were incredible the entire time, remained so, and worked tirelessly. Behind them are campers that were provided as temporary housing by the state through a program. And so we had temporary housing coming in, but so many people at Jimmy John's opened, little groups. There's a guy from Cedar Falls with a barbecue truck came and gave food. Chick-fil-A. There was so much food, so many people, just an outpouring of support that came in and just did good things for the community. The debris removal stuff was a huge issue for us. And so Samaritan's Purse came in, and Samaritan's Purse mud and gutted hundreds of homes for us. and they were here for a long time. Samaritan's Purse was an amazing organization. Couldn't say anything nicer about them. Again, the Red Cross ran our shelter. So eventually, when the floodwaters receded, we moved everybody to the Clay County Regional Event Center, and we ran a shelter at the Clay County Regional Event Center for over a month. That shelter was managed by the Red Cross. Again, after 3 days, on the fourth day, we moved them to the event center, and then the Red Cross took over shelter management for us and did a wonderful job. The thing that I will say about Samaritan's Purse and the Red Cross and even Hy-Vee, who's going to speak here in a minute, that all takes coordination. We all need to make sure that we're not wasting each other's time, that they're not wasting their resources bringing them here when we already have those. And so Hy-Vee was amazing for us in that they brought a generator that powered our police department, and they had a generator that ran our grocery store. And obviously, we need to have food and the availability of food and all that stuff. So Hy-Vee was a great partner for us. Red Cross was amazing. Samaritan's Purse. But again, you need to have somebody who's your volunteer organizational liaison, who's going to coordinate and touch base with all of them, and so we can do it as efficiently as we possibly can. This is my last slide. It was a long couple months for sure, and in Northwest Iowa, all of the emergency management agencies are kind of one-person agencies, and there's absolutely no way that I would have done this, certainly by myself. But we had an amazing team, and I'm a big proponent of relationships. I teach our new emergency managers, and I come in, and one of my big proponents is always it's about relationships. You can have all the plans, but if you're not able to make that phone call, if the mayor doesn't know who you are in the middle of the night when something bad happens, then you failed in your job. And so I work hard to try and establish those relationships, to have those people, because I'm way too stupid to figure this stuff out by myself. And so I need to know who the smart people are. And so, yeah, that's what I got, Cameron.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Eric. I'm going to share a different screen. If you'll stay on for another half hour,
Sure.
Get some questions toward the end.
You did there, Jay.
My mom and dad.
I'll let you add your stuff you added at the end.
They were driving.
Yep, perfect. Well, good morning, good afternoon. We're in the afternoon now. My name is Cole Bisgard. I am the Director of Business Continuity and Disaster Relief for Hy-Vee. I've had the privilege of organizing our public-facing aspects of what we do for disaster response over the last about 8 years now. Hy-Vee's got a very long time of doing that. And so my role was really kind of how do we enable us to do more? And that's what the ask was of me. How can we enable and augment our civic partners to make sure our communities are up and strong, be it either the communities or making sure that the schools stay strong, or that the Red Cross is able to come in and fulfill their mission, all those aspects there. So they want to know how to plug in, and that's where my job has come in there specifically. So I am the only full-time individual that does this. I have two individuals, you got a Mark and a Mark, both listed. They are part-time individuals who are retired. Des Moines fireman is one of them, and then another gentleman who is just a retired guy that's pretty darn good for us. So they do PRN work for us, and they've been pretty solid there. Marty DeMuth was actually a law enforcement individuals up in Northwest Iowa. I mean, the other two are engineers who jump in, but that's my repeatable team that their managers let us jump in and tap into them. To staff up and have a repeatable product out there. And so I always like to kind of show this, our level 3 response, what we look like when we start to fully get together here and run. So myself as being that liaison out there, so the point of contact for yourselves, then we will run with a PIO individual from our communication side, our safety and security. Will help make sure that we do not become a burden on ourselves, but also when those first 48 to 72 hours when people aren't thinking too clear, that somebody's watching my back while I'm sitting there trying to do my job at the same time. or my team. So an operations stance, we're out there with our 3/4 ton trucks, which really just help us get out and serve the individuals in the impacted area. Or in Spencer, find the pathway in to town before we take our 60,000 pound generator down the gravel road that's pretty soggy. Talk about some of our assets here specifically first. These are nice. I always thought these trucks end up doing a lot of good versatility. They can take a pallet of water, which is 84 cases, into a spot pretty quick. So we can hub and spoke out of those. This picture down at the bottom left here, that's actually the Winterset tornado where we just pull up. We had hot meals on one side and then the proteins and the drink on the other side there. So that way the people doing the cleanup can stay in there doing their volunteer duty, and the EM does not lose an hour worth of work for that person stopping to eat. We keep them safe and nutrition at the same time out there. But they're really a versatile asset from a lot of stances out there. This is what we affectionately call Frank the Tank. It's a 6,300 gallon potable water tank. It shows up, it has only had potable water in it, and we maintain that with our food safety individuals out there. So they oversee the aspect of what that is to make sure we're compliant and we get up and running for there. So when we were up in Spencer, we brought it up there because at the time we were worried about losing access into the community, and we wanted to make sure that our store was able to be up and going at that point. So it comes also with a pump. That pump can handle a small building like this. It's just got a couple of toilets and maybe a couple of hand sinks to a production facility. So from a civic standpoint, if we're standing strong, but there is a shelter that's needing it, we would be glad to entertain that conversation there specifically on how we can help support the recovery efforts in there at that point in time. It works pretty well for us, but then at the same point in time, it was good to be plugged into the USC. I want to make a comment here. That mayor just did a fantastic job in Spencer. He really was on point and just wonderful to work with. Same with the PIO. She was absolutely awesome to work through. But when we were plugged into there, we also found out that once we realized we didn't need to have that water in town, we also knew it was also creating conversation, having it in town. So we made sure we got it out there to help with any rumor mills at the same point in time. We have a fleet of mobile generators. So we have some 1 megawatt, 1.25 megawatt, which will take care of our whole store out there. We also have this flatbed out there, which is 300 kilowatt, and then 150 kilowatt unit out there. I should have added our photo from Spencer when we plugged that generator in, because it was actually sitting in flood water when we were plugging it into the store. And that was a very interesting conversation before we powered it up to make sure we were being safe as we were standing in flood water that was rising quite quickly. Putting it in there. We ended up getting quite lucky. The water stopped 2 inches below our dock door and a foot from the front door from getting inside of there. We should put our sandbags up, but you just hold and pray once the sandbag touches water. So we were very glad that that was it. But specifically in Spencer, to talk about that and keep with the spirit of the conversation, we want to make sure that we stay in a position that we're ready, that as people get power back into their houses and into their homes, that we're able to resupply them and make sure that stability stays there first. And that's why we want to make sure we're quick and above and have a game plan before that. Same in Spencer, when that occurred, we just assumed that 60% of our employees weren't going to come in that day. So we went ahead and brought some people in from Sioux Falls, Mankato, Minnesota, Sioux Center, Sioux City, came over, and we staffed up. That way our employees didn't have to worry about what was going on, but then we still were able to be staffed up in the store. And we call them supervisors, they're department manager trainers out there. We brought them in so that the store was ready to go. And then we started cutting deals out so people could get themselves resecured, but then also make sure, think about the power, but also the water, that any feeding operations we have, that we're ready to go with those at the same time too. Yet again, we think the stability part from a grocery store and your school are two cornerstone spots in a community stability. So if we can help present that stability out there and be that stable spot, and then enable and augment the other folks out there, that's our goal. We also have a mobile pharmacy. This was actually used by Thrifty White Pharmacy in Spencer and was set up in the Menards parking lot on the south side of the river. Our store is on the north side of the river. And so they actually operated their pharmacy operations out of this for 3.5 weeks until they're able to get back into their specific location out there. This is a hardened asset entirely. Somebody's gonna have to melee on that thing for a long time to make sure before they'll get into that thing. So it is secure from many aspects. We'll immobilize it there once it's actually up and operational. Water distribution, we have our reefer trailers that are also fit with a lift gate on the back so that they can drop at any location at the same point in time. This is a picture of us doing during a boil order, doing a 4 truckload water distribution in Grinnell. And so that was one where coming alongside the EM, hey, I can provide the product, I can get just a little bit of staff, can you help with logistics and also staffing at that point? So you can see what's a joint partnership to get that done there entirely. Usually Safeguard Iowa will also help us open the gate up for what those opportunities are to serve our communities at the same time. Another thing we changed here too is just as we've learned is our approval process to be faster. So our executives take an annual review on what our external facing activations look like. So I know what I can run with and just inform them of later and what I need to stop and have a longer conversation about at that point in time. Spencer, Greenfield, those were ones that was pretty open actually from those, just let us know what we need to do and get going from that point. Large scale events, we have a direct line of communication. Spencer event, and as that flood started working over that, is actually one of the first times we've had regular operations briefings with the executive committee until we had that thing stable at that point in time. So here's a couple pictures from Spencer. You can see our pharmacy is in the Menards parking lot there for the competitor. Ricky White utilizing that unit there. I do have a picture of the generator after the water went down, sitting in there. As Eric mentioned there earlier, we also powered the police station until the power restored there at that point in time, and then the water delivery and water handouts we did. And we did about 4,000 meals we did for free outside of our parking lot there. Then we started providing them through the Red Cross, and then we brought in Operation Barbecue Relief behind us, and they set up shop for about a week that they were doing upwards of 3,000 meals a day out of our parking lot. So we enabled them, utilize our supply chain to make sure they're in the position, right? So how do we get up and going, enable the resources to go, and then let the partners that do this every day come in and do it long-term from that point. So how do we get runway going with the police department there so they get the power, get the air circulating, so they can get back up and operational from that point. If it's feeding, how do we get the feeding up and going at that point in time, and how we make sure that we're able to be there for our community. So just a recap of, I need to update this soon enough. It's starting to feel like we're well into 2025 now. But last year for us, we served 51 communities out there throughout the course of just over 55 activations. Those ranging from boil orders to tornado support to just community support that happened out there. And then also we've had fires in schools where they lose their coolers. We'll pop in and give them one of those generator or one of those reefer trailers to utilize for a month. Just to make sure that they're up and going at that point in time. There is my contact information. It actually will ring you to Brad Thomas's group back there. Brad can wave his hand, our Security Operations Center manager, and they will get you in touch with the right person all the time. Should I be, I think it was in Florida is where the police chief was at on that one at that point in time. But we are really here to help enable the stakeholders out there, re-enable the community and augment them that position. Thank you.
Questions for Cole? Well, the purpose of us coming together again, I'm Jay Knox. I am the Executive Director of the Safeguard Iowa Partnership. Longtime law enforcement, fire service, emergency management. This is my retired gig that keeps me very, very busy. But as you can see there, the mission of Safeguard Iowa is strengthening the capacity of Iowa and Iowans to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies and disasters through that public-private collaboration. And so really our discussion and kind of what both Eric and Cole have shown you is in disaster response, how we can come together from both, not only the government side, which majority of the folks in this room are, but our private sector to assist. Safeguard Iowa is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation here in Iowa, started back in 2007 by the Iowa Business Council and the government, the state EOC and those others at the time saying we needed somebody to kind of be the go-between during disaster between private sector business and all of our government agencies that are working to respond to disaster. I think when it started out, government was looking at a better way to reach out to private sector resources and get what they need during times of disaster. Somebody that can reach out to, to the Hy-Vees of the world, the nonprofits that we partner with, like Red Cross and Salvation Army, and say, can you help us coordinate these resources during disaster? But what I like to say when I'm talking to our private sector side is it becomes a two-way street, because Safeguard Iowa also gives our private sector businesses a path to communicate with our government and our public sector folks during disaster. And sometimes, Hy-Vee is always at the tip of the spear here in Iowa in a lot of response. but they may have an incident where they have a store that is being isolated because of whatever disaster we're facing. And Cole can come to me and say, hey, if we can't get the roads to this store open back up, there's going to be a cascading impact to that community that will have significant impacts. And so sometimes it is hard for a private sector business to be able to reach out to the decision makers at county and state level during disasters.
That happened in June. Exactly.
And I think of a great experience over in Nebraska where we're all across the line just trying to be able to get to a flooded out area where the community, if they're not getting their food, their grocery stores resupplies, it's really going to be causing a significant cascading event. So we like to say that not only do we ask for stuff during times of disaster and coordinate with our great partners to bring things to the fight, we provide a way that our partners can also reach back to government. You can look at our composition there. Really a little over 420 private sector partners, but 250 of them are government sector, public sector partners. You know, I'm a member of the Iowa Emergency Management Association, but I'm also a liaison to that organization. Every executive committee, council meeting they have, I'm there as the representative, and that is emergency managers from across the entire state of Iowa, representing all 99 counties. And so, you know, Eric and I have talked, we're not responding to disaster, my main role is to be out conducting training for our private sector partners, doing a lot of the homeland security type courses, the active shooter, the business continuity planning type stuff. So I normally am out there partnering with our emergency managers to conduct those trainings across the state. So it's like Eric mentioned, it's not that you don't want to have to, we always say when you show up at a disaster and pass out business cards. As part of my role, I'm interacting with our public sector partners, our emergency managers, our fire service, our law enforcement partners on a daily basis throughout the year. And so when it comes to disaster, we've already established those relationships at my level that hopefully will benefit the communities we're supporting here in Polk County as well. The great thing about my organization, and you know, this is a Polk County Lunch and Learn. My desk is right actually around that corner there. So it's, you know, here in Polk County, we live that relationship every day. But we also have, you see there are 146 nonprofit partners. And just like Eric talked about, when we were looking at the volunteers active in disasters, those organizations that he mentioned that come in and want to support our communities. We work closely with them as well as the Iowa Disaster Human Resources Council, Red Cross, and other agencies to coordinate that response. During disasters, I am normally located down in the State Emergency Operations Center, sitting behind Emergency Support Function 14, which is the private sector coordination emergency support function for the state. Normally sitting next to Chris Judge from the DHS and CISA there. But it is a great location to be able to facilitate the needs from a state perspective in large disasters. The key to what we do and what I'm able to do as a nonprofit here in Iowa is those partnerships. It is free to join Safeguard Iowa. And so every chance I'm out doing training and I'm traveling the state, I'm like, go to our website, sign up, because really that database, those connections are what make us work and what helps us to facilitate our mission of together helping Iowans. So if you're not already a public sector or private sector member of an organization, that QR code to get you right there to the safeguardiowa.org website to become a partner. It'll add you to our database. So that in a disaster, you can reach out to us. If you have a need that I need to help pass to help you get that voice to the public sector and government, or if you have something that you're able to assist in the fight. Like you're on the east side of the state and or here in the middle and it's a northwestern fight, say, we're hearing this is what we can do. And I'm able to pass those resources to hire and show the pool of things that we have here in Iowa that can assist. Sounds simple, but it really is. Because of partners like Cole, partners like Eric and Cam here in Polk County. It's a great place to live and work. I know there's states that the public-private collaboration is not like it is some here in the Midwest and our surrounding states. But I feel blessed to be able to do that and to do what I do. Are there any questions of what Safeguard Iowa is? Yes, sir.
Well, with Safeguard Iowa, you guys are great. I love what you do. And with what Eric was saying, with the community housing and mental health, it's to bring them in. A lot of those are nonprofit or charitable organizations. And right now, with the way the economy is going, they have less to be able to give. Is that, are we planning for that impact down the road where they just don't have it to give? Like Salvation Army or anything like that, because
I know it's a concern from my perspective, and probably 75% of what I do is under a Homeland Security grant administered through FEMA. And so when you start looking at those things, those impacts, I know from the public sector side, it comes back to our government. If nonprofits and other organizations aren't able to volunteer and assist in disasters, it comes back on our state and government to take care of us through tax dollars. And so those are discussions that we're having every day. One of the benefits that I try to say is if someone's active in helping in a disaster anyway, as a nonprofit, as opposed to, you can also donate it through me and take the donation, as the tax deduction to a charitable organization, as opposed to just dropping it in the parking lot. Work with me and we can make it happen, where organizations that are trying to do good for their communities can also get tax credit for when the IRS comes around the next year and you're thinking about it, right? So a good point you reminded me of. But again, all of us, if you support a nonprofit or an agency that's active in disaster, again, remember them. Everybody's kind of hurting right now, and let's not forget about the role they play. So thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions, points?
For anyone, I'll open it up for any of the presenters.
Cole, you might, for people who aren't familiar with Spencer, when you talked about the Hy-Vee store almost flooding, that store is a mile and, I don't know, half at least, maybe a little farther from the river. This is how far the city was inundated.
Yeah,
I grew up in that area. I never had seen floodwaters in that, and Eric's still on too. I've never seen water up in that quadrant of town, let alone the YMCA, which was going to be our original shelter and stuff.
yeah, it was coming up to the manholes quite quickly there. And so I was sitting there and we were watching the water go up, and we had just got that generator hooked up, and this store had a design that the cables actually went down and then back underneath the slab to get back into power the building, where now we do it up and over every time. And I was talking to the executive and he's like, well, what are you gonna tell me? I'm like, I can tell you that the water is rising 2 inches an hour. I have 4 inches until we have to turn this thing off, right? And luckily it stopped just 2 inches short of that. So I guess sometimes you just have to talk about it. But that was a concern of ours in town. We underestimated that specific spot there because it came up so fast on us. We'd heard that it was coming, but we thought it's never touched it still, and we think we'll be fine. But we had at least our ears turned on. We were talking about how we hardened the store, and we put together a sandbag plan and what that would look like. But at the same time, we were trying to catch the breadth of the whole entire event that was taking place there at that time. But we had a lot of stores jump in there too, because we had Haywarden, I think we have mobile vaccination trailers, which will take a pharmacist. They can do any of the vaccines to do out of there. And they did 900 tetanus shots out of that one spot in 2 days out there. Same in Spencer, they did a few hundred out of the store. So if we just get ourselves up and enabled there, they can go a long ways. But it definitely crept in. I think we've learned through other disasters also that just bringing in and augmenting our workforce and planning on them not being there, it's always a safe bet to do outside of that.
And again, in every disaster we respond to, the one thing we always have to keep in mind is coordination and request for resources. Everything we try to provide through Safeguard Iowa initially should come from an emergency manager like Eric saying, I have a need, we have a requirement. We do everything we can to talk to our partners and say, patience, we will ask you for it when we need it, as opposed to self-deploying with tons of stuff that no one needs. And so that becomes a critical part of what we do as well.
Jay's spot Safeguard Iowa, and I've had the opportunity to work with several of their states out there. His organization is pretty solid out there, but it is really also very great when we get the requests to come through, especially if it's going to a nonprofit, to run it back through Jay so that the situational awareness maintains itself there. Because we've had times where we've had to pull back, or it was completely off the radar, that spot was not even impacted. So engaging Safeguard Iowa is never a understated thing. You should do it.
And we've had a lot of the great things that Walmarts and Hy-Vees do. Their store managers have tons of power and authority to give to communities. And sometimes they jump ahead of what the community is ready to receive. And so we sometimes have those conversations as well with the emergency managers going like, hell, we love them. Tell them to wait, give us a couple of days. So any other questions from community side here? Anything else that we can talk about? Chris, any comments from what I do at the state level with nonprofits, Chris Judge with CISA, he does from the federal level. When the state is unable to meet a request, it passes up through there. Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, no real comments, just, thank you for what you do. It's obviously a need. It's very helpful. Cole, the integration, working with public and private sector partners has been great in Iowa. And I've done this in other states, and I think I'm biased because I'm from here, but I think we do it really well here. So, yeah, thanks a lot.
And Iowa is always, we try to solve all of our problems ourselves. And so for the most part, when we go to the federal to ask for help, it's because we really can get there with internal assets. So you should be proud of your emergency managers and the way things are handled at the state, and all of our emergency responders do a great job.
Eric, anything you want to add?
No, I'm just grateful for the time. It was definitely a team effort, and to the lady who's from Spencer or from the area. It was, the last time we flooded was 1953. And so nobody who was responding flooded like that. We have what we call Lake Spencer about every spring where the water kind of stays in the berms, and, but nobody who actively responded to this was even alive the last time this happened in Spencer, Iowa. And so it was unprecedented for sure.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you to our presenters for presenting today. I greatly appreciate it. And if you have any questions or comments, please let us know. There are comment cards out at each seat. If you don't have one, we can get you one, but please fill those out. You can leave them right where they're at. So thank you very much, everybody.
Hold on, sir. Hold on.